are so disrespectful.
He is going to fall off a cliff.
Shut the hell up.
That's not even close to my best.
They're wrong. And I don't give a damn that they agree with me or not.
Richard Sherman called Thursday Night Football a poop fest. But to the fan, it's really more like Brussels sprout ice cream. It's ice cream, so you want it and consume it. But it tastes bad, and when you're done, you think, next time I'm skipping that. And then next Thursday comes, and it's ice cream again. And this time it's sardine flavored, which you haven't tried, so you do it, and so on, from Labor Day to Christmas. And at a certain point, not even you buy the old, honey, it's the Jags against the Niners on short rest. I have to watch excuse. Sad. Fans, players, media moguls, lend me your ears. I come to fix Thursday Night Football, not to bury it. Here is my simple three-point plan. Warning, there is some two-digit arithmetic. 1, Thursday Night Football must work for the teams. No more poop fests. So only those coming off a bye week will play in a Thursday night game. Proper rest and recovery time for the players, enough prep time for the coaches, and travel's a breeze. Good with you, Richard Sherman? Okay. 2, we must avoid bad games on Thursday nights. The solution? Each 4-division team has its bye weeks at the same time. 1 week it's the NFC East. Everybody take the day. The next week the AFC North gets a break. Simple. And that sets up, wait for it, weekly Thursday night divisional doubleheaders. Thursday night is rivalry night. Imagine tomorrow, it's not just Giants-Eagles, but also Dallas-Washington, and everyone's coming off a bye. Next week, it's Chiefs-Raiders and Broncos-Chargers. Honey, this is legitimately important. You're with me, right? All right. 3, we got to make this work. We're too close to turn back now, so here's the math part. First, every division has 2 bye weeks. Every team has 2 weeks off during the regular season and plays 2 Thursday night games coming off those byes. That accounts for 16 weeks of Thursday night football divisional doubleheaders. So that's the first thing. Second, everybody plays the first week of the season and the last week of the season. The 16 bye weeks, 8 divisions times 2 bye weeks each, start week 2 and runs through the second to last weekend, okay? That means that Thursday's rivalry night begin week 3, runs for 16 straight weeks, and ends through the end of the regular season. Okay, so you're thinking now, Max, you need an 18-week season to make that work. The first 2 weeks have no Thursday game, and then 16 weeks of TNF means, yes, correct. So that everyone plays on kickoff weekend and nobody plays Thursdays on short rest, TNF starts the 3rd week. The regular season does expand from 17 weeks of meaningful football to 18 weeks. You can borrow the week from the end of the preseason or add a week in January. Who cares where you get it from? Still 16 games per team, but 18 weeks of action. So to review, divisions take bye weeks together. Bye weeks are followed by Thursday night divisional doubleheaders. Each division has 2 bye weeks and 2 Thursday nights. Season runs 18 weeks. Thursday solved for everyone. And I got a plan to fix Tuesdays and Wednesdays too. Got nothing to do with football. I'm not kidding. Happy holidays.
Oh boy, bravo, Max Kellerman, Max for president. And for more on Max's Final Take, make sure to head over to our Twitter and Facebook pages. All the Final Takes live there. Check them out. And it's a new year and a new move for First Take. Meanwhile, earlier this week, we finally saw video of Oklahoma running back Joe Mixon punching a woman in 2014. We warn you, this video is disturbing. Now we have video of Mixon after the incident, telling police that it felt like a dude hit me when Amelia Molitor slapped him and that he punched her as a reaction. Here's Mixon explaining his version of the events leading up to the assault.
We had no problem with her. She was just being disrespectful, you know, coming smoking in my face and getting acting crazy. So after that, the gay dude, he was just like, he called me something. He was like, so then I was like, what? I was like, you got me messed up. And then I called him. And after that, the girl, she dropped her purse. That's when she came in my face, pushed me, and then my glasses came off, and then like I had like jumped at her like to watch out, and I was like, watch out. And then she came in my face. I put my head down, and she swung on me. And after that, like I was so shocked because she hit me so hard. It felt like a dude hit me, and like after that, like my face hit, just like boom, and like my reaction was just right there.
So to be clear, Mixon told police that he heard a racial slur from Molitor's male friend, but not from Molitor herself, and Mixon admitted that he responded with an anti-gay slur at the male friend. Stephen A., does this latest video change anything for you and your stance?
Yes, it does. It changes it because I think it makes him look worse.
not better. So let me get this straight. A man, you bring up the issue of a racial slur, which has absolutely nothing to do with you hitting the woman. But the racial slur came from a dude, but you hit the girl. Mm-hmm. What sense does that make? I mean, you sound like a flaming idiot. I mean, it doesn't make any damn sense whatsoever. It makes him look worse as far as I'm concerned. There's no excuse for it. And by the way, yes, she hit him first. Yes, she had no business hitting him. And that's a different subject to discuss because men don't need to go around and get hit either. But it doesn't negate the fact that you're 6 feet, 226 pounds. You're clearly the male in this equation. And by the way, if you have the wherewithal to strike her, why couldn't you have the wherewithal to grab her and prevent her from hitting you? Why couldn't you do that? Or to make sure that she doesn't get in your face? You could have grabbed her to refrain her from hitting you without hitting her. You chose not to do that. And then to sit down and to talk, you're basically trying to justify your idiocy and your belligerent behavior. And there's simply no excuse for it. As far as I'm concerned, it made him look worse. The video of him hitting the girl was bad enough. But now that we've heard his explanation, he didn't just look criminal, but he sounded like an idiot. And I think this is the kind of thing that's going to come back to haunt him when it comes to him getting drafted by somebody. I really do.
Yeah, I look at this and see that he knows he's been caught red-handed. It's on video. So it sounds like, and I have no way of knowing whether or not he's telling the truth, but whether he is or he isn't, it sounds like someone who is looking for the things that would somehow come closest to justifying his behavior. Not that it does, because he knows he's busted. So one of them is the third rail of American life, that specific racial slur, because that's the strongest word in the English language, really, and the most reviled and the one closest to an actual physical attack. And so he says that he heard that word. You're right, the source wasn't her, but still he says that one of the sources of the conflict was apparently this other guy. So he says he hears that. And then secondly, he has to say that his reaction wasn't as disproportionate as it looks on video. So he says, look, you can see she hit me and it felt like I was hit by a dude. In other words, she hit me hard. But when he says by a dude, what he's saying is, so just instinctively, I swung back as though that was the stimulus, as though the stimulus was something that it wasn't. So I wasn't, in my right mind when I did it. So whether or not he's telling the truth as to his perception of the events, it sounds bad because it sounds like someone who's had time to prepare to give the only possible explanation he can come up with that comes closest to justifying his behavior. Sounds like I know I'm busted and I'm trying my best to get as off the hook as possible.
Listen, he sounded like an idiot. I'm going to go back to that. It's very, very simple to me. A racial slur came from a man, but you hit the girl? Okay? I don't even know why he brought that up when he was talking about the incident. And then on top of it all, again, you skirted out of there because you knew, like you said, he got busted. You knew that you were wrong. Not to mention the fact that, again, listen, I want to be very, very clear because I had my radio show yesterday, and Merrill Hodge and other NFL aficionados that I had spoken to all said at least half the league is not going to touch this guy. They're not going to want any part because the second you draft him, the first thing they're going to show is the video of him hitting the girl, and they're not going to want that and try to support that to their patrons and their constituency. They're not going to want any part of it, so they're not going to touch him. But the other side to that is this: you also have folks call, and I had so many callers on my radio show yesterday talking about, yeah, but she hit him first. Not an excuse, Stephen A., but she hit him first. Okay, let's make sure we get that out the way. Nobody needs to be hitting anybody. Men don't need to be hitting women. Women don't need to be hitting men. Yeah. Let's get that out the way. But having said all of that, you are a man. You are over 225 pounds. You couldn't grab her to prevent her from hitting you? You couldn't do that? You couldn't do that?
I want to bring up one more thing about this.
You could have done that.
Yeah, I want to bring up one more thing about this because there has been things written and said about the idea that when you read or hear that someone had to have their jaw wired shut, you shouldn't need to see the video. And you and I discussed yesterday, Stephen A., about this is the way, evolution has fixed our brains, that when we hear about things, it seems abstract to us. We hear about statistics and numbers coming from parts of the world, torn by revolution and other disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes. You hear this stuff, disasters and people suffering. When it's in numbers, when it's statistics, you react one way to it and you think that's a very bad thing. When you see it, we're wired for this. When you see that visual, it affects us differently. So I would just say that try to keep in mind this video. This is what it looks like when you read she had to have her jaw wired shut. That's what it looks like. That's the reason she had to have her jaw wired shut. That's what it looks like.
I appreciate you saying that. Stephen, can I add one thing more context to this story?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One other thing, you mentioned that she pushed him first, and that's never okay. Nobody should be putting hands on anyone, male or female. Racial slurs are not okay, just as say anti-gay slurs, those are also not okay. But in terms of her side of the story from Molitor, she was outside with her friends, and Joe Mixon and a couple of his other teammates started taunting and harassing one of her friends for being gay initially. So they go into this sandwich shop to kind of get away from it. And then she's kind of explaining what's going on. He follows her in. They start to get into it. Well, the point that I want to make here is this never had to happen. He could have left the whole thing alone and not instigated it initially. And I know you mentioned, obviously, grabbing her rather than to calm her down, rather than, hitting her back, which is never okay. But it doesn't even need to be that. You need to be smarter than that and not be touching her, period, and just walking away from this situation, a situation that you started yourself.
Well, first of all, you're assuming I knew that part, and I did not know that. I did not know.
No, that's why I wanted to share the context.
Yeah. He was harassing her outside and then followed her in the store. I was not aware of that portion of the story.
Yeah.
Her friends. I'm just saying, I just wasn't aware of any of that. My only point, the only thing I know about is the video that I saw, the two videos that I saw. And I was commenting about that. That's number one. Number two, again, when I sit there and talk about somebody grabbing, I'm not encouraging anybody to be grabbing somebody and putting their hands on anybody. I'm simply making the point that if you are going to react, you could react by restraining someone from inflicting violence upon you rather than having the penchant to inflict violence upon somebody else. That should be your default position, not trying to inflict violence upon somebody else of a different gender who, by the way, she's a woman, you're a man. She clearly is outweighed by, I would assume, by about 50 pounds. You are a man, you have no business punching a woman in the face. You do not do that under any circumstance. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, he was suspended for a year, and we'll see if he pays more through the draft process again, because having the visual, we mentioned Tyreek Hill and his incident, they didn't have the video, and he seemed to be just fine now playing with the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll see if this makes a difference.
And by the way, Molly,
yes.
One other important point. I hope Joe Mixon, those boys, Max, that he was hanging with, where are they right now? He's the one in the news, all right, because of his belligerent and criminal act, to be quite honest with you. But then your boys that were with you. You see, I cover a league in which I see a lot of guys with their boys around who would step in and never allow something to elevate and escalate to that point. Where are they right now? While he's in the news, they're nowhere to be found. I hope this is a lesson for Joe Mixon. Be careful about the company you keep, because maybe if they weren't instigating stuff with you and instead they stepped in and tried to de-escalate the situation, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about him and how his future may end up being compromised.
Yes, I hope a lot of people, there's a lot of lessons to be learned in this mess. When we come back here on First Take, we're going to switch back to football, folks. Why did Iowa players not shake hands with North Dakota after their game yesterday? We'll tell you when First Take rolls on.